This is just one of my experiences that I've gotten when I was fondling the forest for the trees or whatever. um, I was out in the wilderness and I was thinking and looking at the stars and just thinking, why do I ask so many questions, right? And in my adventures and experience of doing shadow work, I've found that the answer that came to me was that when I ask questions, I'm searching or researching, shining my light of consciousness at something else to avoid inner reflection. Like if I ask a question to myself, then I have to reflect on it internally. But if I ask a question of others, then I can avoid having to reflect internally, and therefore it's a form of avoidance. So asking too many questions is really like avoiding having to think about your own self in a way. And I'm sure there's a balance here, right? Because you ask questions and then you reconcile that with your own truth and your own inner understanding and inner dialogues and your intuition, and create an embodied, integrated whole of yourself that you can further extrapolate newer truths and entertain them. But I always found out that, like, when you're in a dialogue with friends or companions or even peers or even strangers, that questions themselves have to be measured in a sense. Like if you ask 30 questions, then you're basically just giving a test. And to a degree, that test can feel like it's an interrogation. The nature of questions themselves are aggressive because they ask someone to look inside themselves to find an answer. And a lot of people who don't have high levels of trust or high levels of safety or comfort or some other reason like respect might not take those questions as appropriate. It might feel like you're questioning their authority or their character or their being or even their actions, and then that can be conflated as a form of doubt. So some people will take, I would argue actually most people would probably take questions from strangers or even people as a sort of attack because it asks you to dig inside to find an answer that you may not be prepared for and you may be flustered. A lot of people who are living moment to moment with their ego typically aren't ready to have their ego challenged or their identity challenged, and questions are sort of challenges. And there's soft questions and hard questions, and they dig at different depths into a person's character and being. So I think you have to be measured when asking questions, right? And this was really just an insight when I was just out there in the woods in the wilderness, just like looking at the stars, just thinking to myself, hey, why do I always ask questions when I talk to people? I'm always digging into other people. It's almost as if I'm having this escape mechanism to avoid having to dig into myself and having to share with myself. And of course, some people love talking about themselves, but I think there's like an appropriate measured response of matching the right frequency and vibration to someone to make sure that there are the appropriate comfort levels of questions being asked and statements being made. And yeah, like no one likes it if someone over explains something, even if it's poorly. And also, no one really likes it if they're asked 5,000 questions. I mean, there's a degree of too much, right? There's a degree of saying too much, and there's a degree of asking too much. In terms of truth seeking, it is very important to have the right question to find the right answer. The way you formulate the question helps you find a better answer. It's like using Google search and you type in some gibberish of words. It's not going to get you the same result as if you typed in a specific prompt. And even more with AI and large language learning modules, the correct use of the prompt, the right questions and the right statements can yield a better sort of answer or sort of thing that you're looking for. So you can use questions to help figure out truth, and using a better question or a more proper, refined question will help you get closer to a better truth that you're looking for, a better answer maybe. And I think it's important too to also ask questions at a rate that you get enough answers, because oftentimes we'll ask so many questions that we don't have a lot of answers for things, and so we'll have to table them for later. So, in a way, it's best to have a degree of answered questions and table a whole degree of unanswered questions for later, and navigate through life knowing with what we know based off of the questions and answers that we have. But of course, everyone's different, so everyone has a different model for how that works, for how truth works, and for how questions work. But I'm just kind of going off of what the idea of questions are, and how they affect relationships as well as the answer and seeking truth. There's a lot of alchemy that can be done with the ideas of truth and refinement through asking the proper questions that can transmute your current understanding to a higher or more wholesome, holistic, conclusive understanding and or truth. But yeah, this is just a riff. I'm just rifting into space. I think that's what I'll call it, rifting into space.